The movie begins with Josh and his girlfriend Kara, who are excited to start their freshman year together. Josh signs up, and a man notices that he is wearing a cross necklace. The man warns him to pick a different instructor, stating that it will make his life easier. However, Josh says the professor can't be that bad. The man further insists that he pick a different instructor, but Josh remains unfazed. The following day, Professor Radisson walks into class and introduces himself. He tells the students that this is a philosophical class and warns those who expect it to be easy that they should just leave, as they are in the wrong class. Furthermore, the professor asks the students to refrain from wasting time trying to prove the existence of God, to save them both some time. Instead, he instructs them all to write God is dead on a piece of paper, which they have all been assigned, and sign their name to automatically pass the class. Professor Radisson continues to push his agenda, urging the students to reach a unanimous consensus that God does not exist. By doing so, he promises to skip the most challenging section of the course, where students have consistently received their lowest grades. One by one, the students sign the paper, until only Josh remains. He hesitates, explaining that he cannot bring himself to deny God's existence. Feeling compelled to defend his faith, the professor, unfazed by Josh's conviction, issues a challenge. Josh must prepare an argument to prove the existence of God in front of the class. If he fails, he will fail the course. Josh, aware of the daunting task ahead, requests that the class is the judge, reasoning that he will need to counter the professor's influence, which has already swayed their opinions. Josh shares the professor's challenge with his girlfriend, Kara. She's alarmed, warning Josh that taking on the professor is a foolish mistake that could jeopardize their future together. Kara urges Josh to reconsider, but he's resolute. Seeking guidance, Josh turns to his faith and visits the church. There, he encounters Reverend Dave, who listens intently as Josh shares his troubles. The Reverend offers words of wisdom, directing Josh to seek answers in the Bible. He instructs Josh to read specific scriptures, which Josh diligently studies. As Josh delves into the scriptures, he finds the clarity and conviction he's been seeking. With renewed confidence, he texts Reverend Dave, declaring his intention to challenge Professor Radisson. The next day, while Josh is hanging out with Kara, his books accidentally spill out of his bag, revealing his research on God. This discovery prompts Kara to break up with him, accusing him of being selfish and putting their relationship at risk. The class begins, and Josh is called to the stage to present his argument. He starts by explaining the Big Bang Theory and the origins of life. Josh announces that he will put God on trial, with the professor as the prosecutor, himself as the defense attorney, and the rest of the class as the jury. As Josh presents his case, a student asks him, "Who created God?" Josh responds with a question of his own. If God was created, then who created the universe? Professor Radisson seizes the opportunity to counter Josh's argument, quoting renowned scientist Stephen Hawking, "Because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing," rendering him mute. After the lecture, Professor Radisson confronts Josh, his tone menacing. "There is a God," he hisses, "and it's me in that classroom. And I'm a very jealous God, and if you continue to humiliate me in front of my students, I'll destroy any hope of a law degree in your future." Josh later bumps into Martin in the library, who asks him why he's taking on the professor. Josh replies, "I feel like God needs defending, and I'm the only one willing to do it." Interestingly, Professor Radisson is dating someone who believes in God when he shares his frustration about Josh's challenge to prove God's existence through empirical evidence with his partner. She surprisingly sides with Josh, changing the mood. Later that evening, Professor Radisson hosts a gathering with his colleagues, boasting about the student who dared to challenge him to provide a rational explanation for God's existence. However, his wife walks in and defends Josh, making the atmosphere awkward as she's in the minority. The professor embarrasses her in front of his colleagues, calling her a work in progress. As the evening progresses, Professor Radisson continues to belittle his partner, using esoteric quotes that only he and his colleagues understand, subtly exposing her as not being on the same intellectual level as them. Josh continued to research about God to make a compelling case. Aisha goes to see the Reverend to tell him about the arrogant Professor Radisson and seek advice. Josh continues with his argument that God is alive, using quotes from famous people. He also uses the professor's quotations against him to win the hearts of the jury. At the end of the session, Professor Radisson scoffs at Josh's attention to prove the existence of God. Aisha visits the university to break up with Radisson in front of his colleagues, leaving him in disbelief. The following week, Professor Radisson tells Josh that today he will finish his charades, sending chills down Josh's spine. Things get heated in the classroom between Josh and the professor as they go back and forth over God's existence. But Josh persistently asks the professor why he hates God until he finally admits, in front of everyone, that he has nothing but hate for God because he took everything from him. He lost his wife, who had been praying to God all her life, but failed to save her. Josh wins the argument with one question: how can you hate someone who doesn't exist? Prompted by this, everyone in the classroom stands up, saying, God is not dead. Check out our next video about a chef that cooks his clients.